I have Susan Tarman on, and I thank you for taking the time because I know you're trying to zip to Santa Fe, and you did this as a favor to me, as most almost that's really probably why you're doing it. So we've known each other for like 30 years, right?
When did you first go to Santa Fe?
I went first, well, I've been going to Santa Fe since a little kid, but because I'm from New Mexico.
But as a dealer.
1996.
Oh, okay. Well, all those years.
Yeah.
I blew into town in 79 and I moved permanently in 80.
But you're from like Wisconsin?
I grew up in Wisconsin.
How do I know that stuff?
I don't know how you knew that.
Yeah. Where in Wisconsin did you grow up?
The Milwaukee area.
In the Milwaukee area. And what did your mom and dad do?
My dad was a small business owner and my mom was a public health nurse, but you know, in those days, they made you quit working when you got married and had kids. So
Right.
she became a housewife and all that. And then when I got into grade school, I'm the youngest of five.
Yeah, okay.
When I got into grade school, she snuck her way back into work. So
I see.
that's what they did.
And so what kind of work did you, I mean, he had a business. What kind
He
of
had a
business?
small business. He started as a tavern, Tarman's Tavern, which is what his father did from Germany.
Oh, wow.
And so he went into that. And then when he got out of the tavern business, he was doing the amusement business in taverns. And he
Oh, wow.
got pushed out because of the mafia in the 50s in Chicago. That was their market, the pinball machines and
Right.
stuff like that. So he went into candy and cigarettes and sodas. And that's really where I got my itch for small business and running an office and keeping things organized. And
Right.
he had such great hours.
I wondered if that's why I asked those questions, because I think sometimes when we see what our parents do and if they're good at it, or even if they struggle but they make a living at it, you absorb that.
He made a good living and
I
he
bet.
was home by, 5 and didn't leave the house till 8 or 9 and golfed every Thursday.
Yeah, so-
Didn't work at all on Thursdays. I mean, I was paying attention.
Yet the reality is your job is still very, very hard. I mean, we'll go through that whole history because you've had a variety of things that you've done, all art related, I might add.
Yeah.
So when you're like this young kid growing up in Madison, right?
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, I'm sorry, Milwaukee. 2 M's there. I don't know any. Sorry about my Wisconsin. I don't really know a lot other than you have great fishing and a great art museum, too, I guess.
Great art museum.
Really great art museum. So when you're growing up in Milwaukee, did you like art? Were you doodling or painting or drawing?
I was a doodler, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have any art skills. But
Not true. We're going to find that, but I think you do.
but
You've been in art for 40 years.
I know.
You examine art for a living.
Yes.
You love art. So, but yes, I think you have art skills, but maybe not in the form of painting or drawing specifically.
Exactly.
But you liked art. Did you like art then, even when you were young?
Well, I wasn't exposed to it much.
Yeah.
I went to a all-girls Catholic grade school and high school, and it was the 3 R's, and
Yeah, writing,
art
right.
class was sort of looked down upon. I enjoyed my art classes in high school, but they were minimal, but I enjoyed them. And then by college, I just really wanted to get out of Wisconsin and get on my own and get away from the family and
Right.
the whole thing. So I just zipped through college, and I actually taught high school in Australia for 4 years.
Okay, so when did you graduate in 74?
75.
From
It
college?
should have been 74,
Yeah.
but I graduated because I did a year abroad. That sort of slowed me down from it. And so I was in Australia by 75.
And what was the year abroad that you did?
Copenhagen.
And why did you end up going to Copenhagen?
Oh, it was just an easier program to get into, and you didn't have to know a language. There was a lot of English spoken. It was an English school, American school. And
this was art history, though, right, that you were interested in? Yeah, so. But so you graduate 74, you must have had some of the people you knew were going to Vietnam as well.
my brother,
Yeah, okay. Did he go?
he went.
Yeah. And how did that affect your life? Terribly?
Yeah.
I can tell.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So, because it affected a lot of people.
In our age group.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you clearly even more. I can see it on your face. We won't go down there. We don't need to. But I asked that question because you are of that generation
Yeah.
that had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Do you think that affected how you saw the world or what you were going to do as a profession?
Well, growing up in Wisconsin in the 60s was really sheltering.
Yeah.
I just had this ache to get out.
Which led you to
You
go
know,
to
just
Copenhagen.
just to get out of Wisconsin. When I was 11, my dad was watching golf on TV in the living room, which had big full plate glass windows. And it was dark. It was in the afternoon. It was already dark. The snow was almost covering the windows. And he was watching golf. That was like in Hawaii or
Right.
California or somewhere. And I said, "Is that going on now?" And he said, "Yeah, this is a live program from whatever." And I said, "Have we been bad?"
Because you're stuck in a cold place?
I mean, I'm looking at that and I'm looking at
Right.
that and I'm like, have we been bad? You know, I was raised Catholic.
Yeah, I see.
Have we been bad? So
What did he say?
I don't remember. I just remember that as a defining moment.
Yeah, at 11.
At 11. I was 10 or 11.
Wow.
So yeah, defining moment of like, that is going on in the world and I am here. What is wrong with
Yeah.
this story?
It was an epiphany.
Yeah, it was an epiphany.
Obviously,
well,
because
we
it's-
all have those, don't we? Throughout our
Yeah,
lives, a
we do.
teacher.
Yeah. But to have such a strong one at such a young age
That I've never forgotten.
yeah.
Yeah,
And can recognize that was a moment
yeah.
that you go back to. And so you got out. You went and did a year abroad, and then you went to Australia. Now, you had an art history degree?
No,
What was your degree in?
My degree was in speech and regular history.
Okay.
Regular history.
Yeah.
So
Speech and regular history. Was that a two combo thing? I mean, was that two different? Yeah, because it seems they seem separated. Entities.
and it was, interesting to translate that into high school history in Australia. You kind of really just end up learning their curriculum and that whole thing.
And so when you're in Australia, you're teaching?
I'm teaching. I'm a school teacher.
And you're
a high
teaching
school
history?
teacher. Yeah.
But you were teaching Australian history, right?
Yeah, and some world history. I mean, not really what I was my métier, but when you're that age and you want out and you just do what you do. It's kind of how I got into the art and antique world, was running into Vic Hansen.
Were you doing anything in Australia art related or anything antique related?
No, just looking at it.
And enjoying life. You're young, you're in your 20s.
Exactly.
It's beautiful, it's sunny.
Sunny, lots of swimming, lots of hiking, lots of camping, because I wasn't in one of the big cities. I was 4 hours outside of Melbourne
Oh, wow.
on the Princess Highway, which
yeah.
back then was just a little two-laner. It took almost a day to get to Melbourne back then. Now you're probably there in a couple of hours.
Right.
On a super highway, but back then it was a day trip into Melbourne, and
Yeah.
so it was mostly outdoor stuff.
Oh, and why didn't you stay? What brought you back?
Again, reading the Melbourne Age and seeing on page 14, these things just stick with me, that Russia had invaded Afghanistan. And it was on page 14, and a little thing. And it was that thing that let me know, by then I was 26 or 7 or 8. And just let me know, I felt like the world was passing me by.
In what respect?
Well, if you look at Australia on a globe,
Yeah. It's at the bottom of the world.
It is away from everything that, as a Westerner, you are. So after 4 years, I guess I just felt like it was time to get back to the world,
Yeah.
as my brother would have said in the Army.
Yeah. It's surprising. Well, I don't know if it's surprising. I think it's remarkable that you can remember page 14.
I know, right? These things just stick with me.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Well, because I went page 14 and I look at the front page and it's man cuts foot on city beach. And they're cleaning up the broken glass on Bondi Beach. No, that's Sydney. But whatever beach it was, I
Yeah.
don't remember that. So things like that just stick with me and move me.
I have a feeling you were looking for things at that moment, searching in your own mind of, is this the right path? And then that was the igniter to go, no, I'm guessing.
You're right on, because that's how I got through college. I only went through college because my father said he'd pay for a full program, 4 years. That was what he gave all of us kids. And I thought, well, I'm not going to pass that up.
Right.
But it was like wanting to get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
And so I just took whatever classes I liked, were easy, just did a program, and really was searching for, you're exactly right on. I mean, I was in my 20s, very sheltered. I spent that year in Copenhagen without parents and with kids my age. And that was a big growing experience, but it was a constant search.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you also go to this Catholic high school and all that. So you have this extremely sheltered kind of sense of what the world is and who you are, maybe spiritually even, or whatever, I don't know. But so you leave.
Well, spiritually, oh my God, Catholic, you know.
Well, there's that's one kind. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, I mean the spirit. It's a different thing for sure.
Like, that's not spiritual.
Yeah. So that didn't stay. That part didn't stick.
That
either.
didn't stick.
Yeah.
That didn't stick.
Yeah. You end up in Santa Fe, which I think is very spiritual in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
And in native arts, which is incredibly spiritual.
Yeah.
So you leave at 28-ish.
Yes.
So this is like maybe 77?
It's the end of 78.
78, okay.
I'm back in the country because their school year runs differently. I'm back in the U.S. in January of 79.
And where do you go?
I go back to Wisconsin. My dad helps me buy a car, a little Volkswagen Fastback. I load it up with sort of camping gear and my clothes, and I head out and spend 14 months on the road.
Boy, there's that searching. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where all do you go?
I have all these people I know from Copenhagen and from Australia. Well, about 3 people that came back from Australia. But probably mostly my friends from Copenhagen, because you get tight when you're that young. And just would stay with them for a week or so. And just still searching.
So it was a walkabout, basically. And where all did you go?
Well, I went everywhere in the United States except the South, because I was also of the age of, what was that movie with Fonda and Hopper?
Yeah, Easy Rider.
Easy Rider. So that had me afraid of...
getting knocked off.
Because I also had, a bag of weed in the car. So I was going to avoid that.
Right.
And I went through Santa Fe on that trip and loved it and stayed longer than I anticipated. But I went on with my trip. And a lot of the people from Copenhagen after Copenhagen, I was a chambermaid at an army base in Bavaria. And a lot of those guys and girls were in Jackson Hole. So that's where I stopped for 79.
Because they would go in and work as maids and different things from Bulgaria. Different places.
You would you could work, Americans could work in all the army bases.
Right. So you went there in Jackson Hole.
And I helped start for a year, and I helped start a residential treatment program at a ranch in the Tetons for emotionally disturbed high school kids that were slipping through the cracks, because there wasn't a program in high school that helped emotionally disturbed kids. They weren't named.
Was this for local people?
Well,
Or
all
did-
of Wyoming.
Okay,
We got them from all of Wyoming. I mean, it was pretty empty back then.
right. Still is kind of.
So yeah, so
And what made you want to do that? I mean, that's a real
well,
departure.
my expertise was with. I really got on with high school kids. That was my thing. I really liked the kids.
Yeah,
And I didn't want to teach anymore. That was a way to get out of Wisconsin.
right.
And you know, Jackson Hole, what was there to do then?
Yeah.
You know, nothing. So that was a year, but I hadn't forgotten Santa Fe.
I see.
So it was a rough year. We did a good job. The program still exists.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But I headed back down to Santa Fe. I thought the climate's better. It's still got the four seasons that I relate to.
Right.
But I got to go somewhere more gentle. It was a rough year. I broke my shoulder skiing, my clavicle skiing, and the kids were, you know, trying to
challenging.
set that up.
Yeah.
And it was a success, which is pretty cool. But a year was enough.
And that was about 1980?
I left in 1980.
Yeah, so you go to Santa Fe.
I go to Santa Fe again.
And it's the perfect time, really, to be in Santa Fe. I mean, things are exploding there.
You know,
right?
I always felt wherever I was, and I went to some fabulous places on my travels, especially in Southeast Asia and stuff. But I always felt like, oh, it's the 70s. It's all been there, done that. This is all modern now. Nothing's authentic.
Yeah, where's the history?
That's what I always felt. Now looking back, it was like there was so much authenticity that I was taking for granted. You know, so both things were true. And I felt that about Santa Fe. Oh, I've missed the Taos 10 and
Right.
the
Right. All the Taos founders, the Santa Fe artists are almost gone. The Fremont Ellis is still alive. There's some of them.
blind but painting.
Yeah, there's still people that were there. And so you show up in Santa Fe. You're like almost 30 now, 29 or in that area.
Exactly.
And what do you do? I mean, Santa Fe's hopping, and it's not as expensive as it was.
I started waitressing at
Where?
downtown, Washington Avenue Deli.
Okay.
You wouldn't know it. It was
don't.
gone by then. Tony Abeda and his daughter ran it. And, you know,
Tony Abeda?
Tony Abeda had the house by Patrick Smith Park at the end of East Alameda,
Yeah.
right on the park. And he and his daughter ran it, and it was just all old school.
It wasn't his sister, it was his daughter?
It was his daughter,
Oh, wow.
Linda. And I can't believe I'm remembering this stuff.
Yeah, so he was running that. Was he doing art? He must have been.
No. The way do you want to know how I got into art?
Yeah, of course I do.
Or do you want to know more about the Washington Avenue Deli?
Both.
I ran, my husband was the O'Keefe Brothers Construction in the 70s, and they would drink at the Washington Avenue Deli, and he and I hit it off and started dating, and he drove me all around New Mexico. This is a rock he picked up in...
Yeah.
This is a rock he picked up when we were camping in the Burro Mountains in southern New Mexico. And about, I guess, 8 years ago now, he gave the rock to a local jeweler and had this made for me for like an anniversary or a birthday or something like that.
And this was your husband's brother?
My boyfriend.
Boyfriend.
And became my husband.
I see. Okay.
So
that's cool.
he took me all over New Mexico, showed me, because he's from Santa Fe.
I see.
And so he showed me all of New Mexico. It really, and I was tired of traveling alone,
Right.
and not knowing what I wanted to do. And he, on all these trips, because he was a geology minor, he said, let's do the GIA course. So we did the Colored Stones course
This
together.
is gemology, right? Okay.
Institute of America. And we, to get out of waitressing, I went around to the different galleries that was selling colored stone jewelry, estate jewelry, and I went to Things Finer, Rob Pettis.
Yeah.
And he was probably snickering under his breath, like, you want to work in my store with one GIA course, right? Colored stones. And, but he was lovely. And he said, Vic Hansen is looking for someone. And now here is where the dovetail fits right into the tenon, because I loved organizing. Like my dad's little business. I just loved organizing.
Right.
German Catholic Virgo. I was like, I met Vic, charming guy, most charming guy in Santa Fe at the time. I sit down, I meet him. It's this, well, you remember the store, don't you?
I don't, because it was
90.
Yeah, it was.
He sold it to me in 91.
Yep. So
And this was 81.
I opened my gallery in 92. I was going in and out of Santa Fe, but no, I don't. I've never met Vic Hansen.
It was.
But I've heard all these stories, and you told me stories actually when I would go in to your store and you would tell me about him.
Well, he was, God, he had a photographic memory.
Yeah, that's
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have that in a profession like antiquing and art,
Yeah.
I mean, you're golden.
You mean like page 14?
Oh, I don't have the photographic memory. I wish I did. Those are special moments. But he did have page 14. Yeah. I mean, he would literally think out loud, look at a hanging fixture that came in, and he'd think out loud, oh, Antiques Magazine, December issue, 71. Yeah. Literally, his whole life was like that. He was amazing. And he was modest. He probably felt lesser than because he didn't go to school. He joined the Navy at 17 or something. So he felt lesser than all these people that looked up to him.
Right.
He was very modest, very charming, good looking in kind of a not so good looking way, the crooked nose and the kind of rugged face. But I mean, the combo was killer. And we just hit it off professionally.
Yeah.
We really did. I mean, I was a sponge. I'd had very little art and no antiques in my life. And so I was a sponge. Mm-hmm. We hit it off. Our personalities were made for each other. And, by the time I learned the trade, Mary Brannon, I should say her name, because she was his right-hand man for a long time, and she taught me everything I knew about how to run a gallery. She's gone now. She died of some kind of cancer not long ago. I still miss her and think of her because she taught me everything I knew how to run it. He taught me everything about
the material.
Oh, man.
And everything. He was Spanish. He was really known for Spanish and colonial New Mexican type things.
Well, New Mexican, but what we covered was all the things everyone else in town wasn't covering. Everyone else was doing what you do.
Right.
And the Spanish colonial. But he did American and European antiques, pre-Victorian. We didn't handle anything after 1830 or 40. So it was all the early stuff. And I mean some early stuff. I mean, I sold a lectern from Germany that was from the 16th century. Yeah. But the people that came through in the 20th century were bringing these things from the East.
And they all came to Vic because he's the only guy in town.
There was another guy in town, and I can't remember his name, but he was a little smarmy. And there was a guy in the David, I don't remember his dad's name, and I just forgot David's last name. And his dad had the English antique shop in the brick building on Canyon Road. That's Ventana now. Oh, I can't believe I don't remember David's last name. And so there was that guy.
Yeah.
And there was this guy, kind of a smarmy guy is how I remember, at where Old Pecos Trail and Old Santa Fe Trail split.
Yeah, I know where that building is.
That he was there. Those were the antique stores back then. And then there was Clem Streck, in the big yard doing the auctions and doing the big stuff. Vic was more picked cherry picked.
Yeah. And who would come in at that time? Because you had to have lots of interesting people, Santa Fe. You know, did people like O'Keefe come in, or?
She was too aged at the time, but
Yeah.
we actually sold the furniture that they moved into the house on Old Santa Fe Trail that Juan moved her into.
He just died.
In that
actually.
last, she died in like, what was it, 86?
Yeah, right in that time.
87.
And Juan died this week.
I know.
Yeah, so.
I know.
So that you sold furniture from Ghost Ranch kind of thing?
So they bought this big fancy home off of Old Santa Fe Trail.
Yeah.
And we never saw her. She was in her chambers when we would go in and just work with Fred. And I forget her last name too. And she took care of everything with O'Keefe.
Mm-hmm.
And all those kind of sales and things like that. I don't think I ever met one. I probably didn't.
Yeah, I mean, people probably came in all the time.
All the
right?
time.
Because that was still on Paseo del Peralta, the building. That's where it was, right?
Yes, right next to the streets of Taos.
Yes, exactly.
And just everybody who came into town and everyone who moved into town as a second home. That's back then when people did their own shopping and they would look at pieces for, a month or two, and then buy a whole load of stuff. Dealers from all over, mostly Texas back then, but California didn't start coming till probably the 90s. The 80s was so much Texas and Oklahoma and just those Wyoming. People came down from there, and the men that were artists and dealers who had bad relationships with their dads gravitated to Vic like bees and honey. I mean, they loved Vic because he was such a gentle, smart, kind person.
He could be their dad.
He really was the surrogate dad for so many male artists and dealers of the day. So that we filled with that. And he was a ladies' man.
So he had lots of.
So there were a lot of women coming through too.
How old was he when you were doing all this? Because he sells you his business in what year?
Well, when he
92?
turns 65 and he thinks he's going to retire. So he sells me the business in 91.
Yeah.
We go through this whole, actually closed for the first time in his history of having galleries.
When did he open that gallery, do you know?
It would have been around the early 70s. He came from Denver, and I forget the name of the town, everyone. Aaron, I can't remember the name of the town he came from. That dealer from Denver, Aaron, he was from the same town. Anyway, he came down from Denver and leaving his first wife, getting away from her and 2 children. And it was probably the early 70s, at least the mid 70s. And he met his second wife, Marge, who was working for that antique store in the brick building. And why can't I remember that?
So he meets her, marries her.
So he marries her, and they make a great couple in many ways. But he is a ladies' man.
So, okay.
He is a ladies' man.
So, and maybe not as great as a husband then.
Right. Well, they loved each other dearly, and he had to straighten up every now and again when she'd get really angry, because they did make a great couple. She was from New York.
Yeah.
She had that Maria Callas look that was so popular in the 60s, and so he had to, and their home was like Nordfeld's home, right off of Old Santa Fe Trail.
Was it
Camino de
Nordfeld's
las
home?
Animas, where Bauman's home was.
Yeah.
And they just, they were a powerful couple in the art and antiques world.
But they were, I know you dealt in paintings. Was he dealing in paintings as well?
Yes, and he taught Jerry Peters the painting business. I mean, Jerry and I were kind of his mentees together. Jerry, of course, with his own business, and me learning it. And so
he would come in and Vic would talk to him about different.
He had probably learned the painting business before I got there, but they were still very tight. He was tight with John Norton, Jerry Peters, and Clem Streck. Those were the three. I mean, and everyone loved him. And and when he and Clem or he and John would travel together, all they did was go from gallery to gallery to gallery. And I mean, everyone was picking his brain because he never forgot a thing about anything. I mean, he was truly amazing.
And that's where you learned about paintings as well?
Paintings, furniture, silver, European porcelains, European pottery.
Right.
We did all the stuff that no one else was doing, but all these wealthy people that were moving in were bringing from the East.
Yeah, so you'd get it.
That was,
Yeah.
it was a jewel box when you walked
And
in.
was it primarily a dealer place to buy?
Totally.
Yeah, that's how I remember it.
He was a dealer's dealer.
Yeah.
He was not the retail guy at all.
Right. And so you take over the business in 92? 91. And so that was a big deal to do that.
It freaked me out. I
bet.
did not think I never saw myself as the head. I always saw myself as the number one, you
Right.
know, or the number two or whatever.
And that was Susan Tarman's Antiques, right?
Yeah. Do you remember Howard Houston?
Yeah, of course.
So, because I was so freaked out about taking this over and walking in Vic Hansen's shoes, which everyone knew at the time, no one knows who he is now, but I kept a little sign under Susan Tarman. Marge would not let me have the name Hansen Gallery.
Okay.
So I was like, oh God. But everyone knew me as Victor's Susan.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I have to keep Susan in there, but I want people to learn my last name.
Right.
So my first business was called Susan Tarman Antiques and Fine Art. And then I put a little sign underneath that said formerly Hansen Gallery. Well, I forgot over years that it was hanging there. Who even remembers or
Right.
notices, right? I didn't. And Howard Houston would not let me forget that was up until finally one day I went, do you want me to take it? Is this bothering? Do you want me to take this down? So that was Howard's and my ongoing joke.
Well, I remember your galley going in there, and it was always just jammed packed.
Jammed.
Completely and utterly jam packed. And there was so much to see. You really had to take your time to go through
Yes.
it.
And it was a house on Castillo Street back then, Paseo de Peralta,
Yeah.
that was turned into, or maybe started as, but I think it was a house that turned into, it might have started as a duplex. So there were two doors, two front doors, two back doors, two bathrooms in the middle, the front room, living room, the side room where the bathroom was, and another little side room for basements on both sides.
Right.
A kitchen was where the main office was. This kitchen was a porcelain room. Every room
Yeah, I remember.
had, there's
Little theme.
The Asian room was in the
Right.
back.
Right.
The whole back was the stuff you do, the Indian stuff, because we had a lot of it because we were in Santa Fe, but we certainly weren't specialized.
Yeah, no, it wasn't your thing. But you started doing appraisals at some point, right?
Well, I went to all the appraisals with him. That was when you had a couple rolls of 36 film.
Yeah.
I was the photographer. I was the note taker.
Right.
He spoke, and I just wrote
Right.
really fast as we went through a house. And back in that day, appraisals, you did everything for estate appraisals, IRS purposes. Everything had to be listed. And then I would come back, and he only had to look up like 3 things in an appraisal that had 200 items.
Yeah.
He knew everything.
Yeah.
And so I would then get in the back office and start typing.
Yeah.
Catholic school, thank you for that typing class, because I was on a typewriter back then. And so, I mean, not only did I work with this guy most of the day, although after a while I never saw him, he'd come in and say, what am I doing? And I'd say, well, you're going to the bank with this.
Yeah.
You're going to this address to pick up this. And,
Right.
So I really ended up learning so much from being with him at the appraisals and then typing the appraisals
Yeah.
up.
So you were completely ready actually to take over the gallery. You just had to convince yourself of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was so scary.
Yeah. I get it.
And it shouldn't have been because it was all running so well.
But you still have to make the mortgage. You may have some people that work for you, insurance, all that stuff.
Suddenly becomes,
Yours. Right.
and it
And
consigners.
you've lost him.
Yeah, and I've lost him. He lived another 2 years, but he was sick. He died at 67 of prostate cancer. Yeah, which was a shock to him and Marge, because he was finally going to retire at 65, and just they traveled to Italy every year, and she was Italian American, and they traveled around the country, and they were going to keep buying and selling with Clem,
Yeah.
you know,
Shit happens.
and it was over.
Yeah.
It was shocking.
Yeah. I can still see it shocking to you.
Yeah, it was. He was a big figure.
Yeah. You know, and so few people really know this story.
Yeah,
You know, I know it through other dealers, but I never met him or knew him.
yeah.
So now you're on your own,
So now I'm on my own.
and you have that gallery space for quite a few years because you opened another one.
91 Hilda Street, another character.
Boy, I'll say.
Have you interviewed anyone?
No,
No, about the streets.
but I
Elizabeth still comes and goes
Yeah.
a little bit. They live in, she and her family live in Mexico now. But I mean, the Street family was quite a story. You should get on a podcast someday. They were our landladies. And she died in 2000. And they were going to raise my rent from $750 a month
Right.
to $3,500. And they weren't even going to do it. They were going to redo the whole place. I had to move out and move back in.
Right.
And, I'm thinking, boy, they're not used to making rent and, keeping things going. So I moved to the rail yard in 2000.
I remember it was a very nice building. Really liked it.
Right now, a beautiful old building, the warden of the prison, which used to be on Penn Road, not far from there, was the prison. So this was the 19th and early 20th century adobe home of the warden of the prison. It was a beautiful building.
Yeah.
And right next door was Cardrage's and the flower market.
Yep.
And all the people that came in for the weekend
Mm-hmm.
or for a holiday like Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, and just for weekends, they'd fly in they'd come to a flower market, so they'd have fresh flowers for the weekend. And where would they stop?
They would stop and say, yeah.
I was so lucky because the move was harder than I mean, people didn't find me like I thought they would.
Yeah. I did.
People who worked hard at it find it.
No,
so,
it was like, well, because I could go over there and hopefully find something,
yeah,
and sometimes something really great,
yeah,
Fremont Ellis or whatever.
Yeah.
There was always something in there.
Yes.
It was jam-packed too.
And because of the way the market structure was back then, I mean, the Santa Fe artists and the secondary artists really was a strong market back then. 2008 really kind of killed the secondary market.
Yeah.
The regional painters, that really fell away in 2008. But back in the 90s and 2000s, that was my bread and butter.
Yeah.
Gene Kloss,
Yeah, I remember that.
Fremont Ellis,
I know that.
those were my...
Yeah, the ones you really dealt in and
Yeah.
specialized in. And how long did you have that gallery?
2000 and January of 2006, I came home from the gallery, and I'm now, I've been doing appraisals and running a gallery for however many years that is. And I come home and look at my husband and say, this isn't fun anymore. Because I was such a great multitasker. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved multitasking. I zipped around like, And I just,
You burned out.
I was 53.
You burned out.
I burned out. I
Yeah.
went, this isn't fun. And I was closed by June 27th. I gave the keys back to my landlord.
And so what did you do with
6
all
months.
your inventory?
Well, I put out a card. I had a Cinco de Mayo party every year. That was when I moved into the new space and put the card out to my mailing group. And it said, by then I was Tarman Galleries is closing and Tarman Appraisals and Consulting is opening. And people got that card. I didn't think anything out of it. So the Cinco de Mayo party was this going away party.
Right.
Or a closing party. I couldn't believe the people that came in. And I couldn't believe the people that came in. I mean, and they just kept coming in I think I put it out in April. And when's the sale? When's the sale? And I said, I had contacted a dealer from Minnesota who was a real good buyer of mine. And because, that's the kind of stuff we were still handling.
Right.
And not only was I burned out, but antiques were waning.
Yeah.
By
the
then.
interest in them.
What I was selling was waning, and the mid-century modern
was off.
in, and it wasn't going away.
Right.
And I wasn't about to
Switch.
You
could have.
I could have. But it was perfect for me because being a German Catholic Virgo, doing appraisal suits.
Yeah, you're very detailed oriented, for sure. You're a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing. And so it's
in a way. I mean,
I
like to shave corners in ways real perfectionists wouldn't do, but it suited me.
Yeah.
And the rat race and the competition with all the other dealers. I mean, I was so over it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because you have to compete for that.
Oh, you had to compete for that, and the competition was changing.
And getting more. People like me were coming in there.
Yeah, and I just...
Other people.
Yeah, and men,
Yeah, no, let's talk about that. Because you are in a profession that's predominantly male-oriented.
Yeah.
And how did you deal with it? And did you feel that, sexism, really?
I did.
I would think.
I did. John Hill was the one dealer that made me feel like he didn't see the gender. He stuck with me with when I would get that kind of material. He was the one that honestly would help me and not just try to get it from me.
Right.
So, he was the one that I think the way men treat each other. He was the one that was the straightest with me, is how I remember. Nat Owens offered in a way. Jean Seth had a huge, her daughters had a huge sale of auction. That was a big deal in Santa Fe back then, whenever it was. And after Vic died, Nat treated me quite well as well. And there was a moment at that auction where there was an entree he kind of offered to me. And I was too insecure. He said that someone came up to him and said, it was Channel 7 News or something, we'd like to interview you. And he said, Susan, come with me on the interview for the news.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't do it. And I think that was my opportunity to work with Nat. And I continued to work with Nat in a way, but it was in a much stepped down way than the way I think he was offering me to keep working with him at the level that he was with Vic.
Yeah, got it.
And I just...
Didn't fit you.
No, it was all too much. I liked the sort of downplayed way that Vic ran the gallery, which is why we probably hit it off so well. And those times had changed. You had to really step up to that kind of big, scary platform that I wasn't ready for.
Well, and also you have to buy the inventory. Expensive. And, you put $30,000 in a painting, you got to make it go away.
And I bought a number of large things alone and with people, and they were stressful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as a dealer, you have to understand your limitations, where your comfort zone is and not, because some people are very happy to deal in
And be in the
extremely,
red.
yeah, you have to,
I
yeah. Yeah. You didn't like debt.
I was never. My dad was never in the red.
Yeah. But there's something very good about that
Yes,
because you are still doing very well and haven't had any problems in the sense that there's dealers that get so, we don't have to say who they are because it's clear, who get over, leverage or whatever, and it can come back where everything goes well until it's not going well.
and then it's really going very badly.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in not having too much debt.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to take debt in this business. There's just no, I mean, if something major comes along and you want to, or have to buy it because they need to sell it, you have to have the capital or get the capital to do that. But, everybody has, again, their own level of
comfort.
Yeah, and yours, which I think is healthy.
Yeah, and when you're a multitasker, you can do some of that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't comfortable with it to begin with, so I
Yeah.
bought a Chumash basket that I ended up having to sell to the dealer I bought it with because they wanted to hang on to it longer
Yeah, you needed the capital.
and wait for the market to.
Right.
And I was like, I need
Yeah,
the
I want
money
out.
back in.
Yeah.
And then I bought a coachety, beautiful. Marshall bought it. Do you remember Mr. Marshall? He bought that coachety pot. Was it that one? Yes. And boy, no, it was a different pot. But anyway, another thing cost me 20 grand, and I bought it in the spring. And I know that the summer is when it's got to sell.
Right.
And the opera's over, and now Indian market is coming and going.
And it's hanging over your head.
And it's still in the gallery, and I sold it the last weekend of Indian market.
And that,
And I went,
bothered
I
you.
don't think I'm going to do,
Yeah. Well, that's okay though.
but I made money, and
Yeah. But it was the anxiety of having that over your head and knowing you needed to sell it. You don't want to tie that kind of money up for something, and you still have to buy inventory too, other things.
And some people like that anxiety.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think people are addicted to that anxiety.
Some can. Yeah.
Some,
Yeah. Well, I think we're all addicted to buying.
yes.
All of
It's
us.
hard to say no to stuff.
Yeah, because it's the fun is in the buying. When you see something unusual or interesting, or you can recognize what it is that maybe others can't, or you see a lane for this that others may have never seen before, and you go, I see something there, and I really like that. That to me is one of the great joys.
Yeah,
And I still collect. I'm still a collector.
yeah. I went to your museum.
Yeah, exactly. The bottom line is I'm a collector, which puts me in a different kind of mindset maybe than
Yeah.
dealers who just go, I got to turn this
Yeah,
fast or whatever.
yes.
Sometimes it hurts me to sell something.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to sell it. I'd rather have the object than. I have
Yeah.
a feeling Vic may have been a little bit that way.
No.
He didn't have any
In
problem.
and out.
Completely.
In and out.
That's so interesting.
When I first started working for him, he would come in literally every day. He
Yeah.
always had a used station wagon,
Yeah.
and he would come in his station wagon. I'd open the back door, and it would be box after bag after box after piece of
Of
furniture.
stuff that he's bought.
And
So he still gets the joy and dopamine hit of the buying.
and he wasn't that good at. I was the seller because, and then he'd tell me what everything was and what to price it, and then people would just appear because they knew his routine,
Yeah, he came back.
and he'd leave.
And go do the other thing. Yeah, I see that a lot in dealers, certain dealers especially. It's I want to get on the road. I want to find the stuff. I enjoy the buying. That's the component that they
I
get.
think he would. I think he could look in a crowded room and just know what everything was, and that must have been such a turn on. To just look around and know what everything is that he's
Yes.
looking at, and then know where he's going to make the money.
Yeah, and saying it.
And
Yeah.
he never made double or triple or anything like that. He made enough to
Yeah, keep buying
keep
the
the
next
money
thing.
coming in.
Yeah, Yeah. No,
turning around.
yeah.
He was, but those were a different day when the material, I don't know what the
I
material.
don't know if it is a different day. It's the way that you acquire the material is different. Now you might be sitting in your home going through internet site after internet site after auction after auction, but it's a different way, but you still have to have the skill sets, different skill sets. In fact, you have to be able to go, oh, that's been photoshopped, or that's this, or I need these kind of photos to understand it. So it's a different skill set for sure. I have to have that skill set now because I see so much material that's offered to me online. So but it's the same kind of thing for sure. It's just not running to swap meets or antique stores or whatever.
Yeah.
That's less the way. It's generally online. But you can come into this gallery and find stuff like that. I mean, there's so much material.
Yes, I know.
And
I know what's good, and I go into a lot of galleries that are this packed, but I don't see this much quality across the board. That's what I loved about coming in here last week was, you get that first hit of, oh my God. And my second thought is there's just going to be so much stuff in here that I'm not going to want to even have my eyes look at because that can be painful.
Right.
And I don't usually stay in places this packed. And I mean, the quality of your stuff is astounding.
Yeah. It's at that pinnacle of doing it for so long. You can you can be a little choosy and try to get the right stuff.
Yeah. And the right artists. You know.
That too. That's again, just takes time. Mm-hmm. So you do this, you've done your gala, you close in 2006, and then you go strictly to doing appraisals, which you still are doing, right?
I still am doing. And I was doing, 6 or 7 at a time, still doing really large ones. At our house, we have a little adobe house downtown, and the garage was turned into a casita.
Yeah.
So that became my office, which was nice. I could have people come in still because right after I closed, people were still kind of coming to me.
Right.
So it was nice to have that separate space. And so I was 53, and then by 60, I was like, I can't keep working this hard, even just out of, and Brian and I could go to Mexico for a month, and I could be earning my, $125 or $150 an hour in Mexico and work 3 or 4 hours a day and then be in Mexico the rest of the day. 60, I had to start slowing down, but it was still a huge pace. And then I'm 72, so I think around 68, 69 for sure. I was like, oh, this is still way too much work. So it took me until probably the beginning of last year, 70, 71, where now I'm in this wonderful pace. That's where I've been so lucky. When I needed the phone to stop ringing, it stopped ringing. When I needed it to ring, it rang. I have been so lucky in my work. And by early last year, I really was doing appraisals that were fun and one at a time with a couple of weeks off in between. Now I'm even doing, at 72, I'm even doing a lot of consultations are coming my way because money has changed so radically. There's no way you would do appraisals today the way we did them in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. There's just... everything is so expensive now that all the things that don't make it to 3,000 or 5,000
aren't worth appraising.
You just, wonderful things that are great antiques that are no longer popular.
Right.
That I would never leave off an appraisal before. They were only $500 or $800, but I'd never leave them off before because it was a real thing.
Right.
That was made in 1780,
Right.
In Meissen, Germany or something. You wouldn't leave it off, even though it was only worth about $800. Well, now you wouldn't even touch that.
And is that because the object has so little value, or
it's not popular? It's no longer in vogue.
Right, and it costs money for you to do it.
Yes, right? Exactly. It costs an hourly wage for me to make notes on it, take a photograph of it, and put it in the report. And so, why would you do that when you're really only looking at things? IRS standards is 3,000 and up, but the attorneys I work with now, it's 5,000 and up.
Yeah. So if it's above 5,000, then it's worth
Because that's
doing
not
it.
a lot of money these days.
Right.
You know, back then, $3,000 was a lot of money.
Yes.
That's not much money these days.
And so you're picky at what comes through you. You pick the estates that are kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Or you know the area
I'll
very
do
well.
some things that aren't fun, but no, all my estates, like the one I'm doing now, the art is really worth my
Yeah.
time.
You enjoy it.
Yes,
You're back to
sitting
enjoy
and looking it up. And
And aren't you here as a conference or something too? As
no,
well?
my niece was here at a conference.
Her conference, okay.
And so I go to visit her since I can drive from Santa Fe to stay at the resort the conference is at,
Yeah.
see her, be at a resort,
Right.
and you know, I
an
worked. We had
interview.
rain and it was cold this week, so I
Yeah.
got a lot of work done.
Yeah.
But I was at a resort.
Yeah, yeah. So, but you're a curious person. You like to learn,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
I would think that's part of the draw of this business. And you love history, clearly, because you have
Yeah.
history degrees. And so you're still at 72.
Two.
You're still enjoying it, doing it. And what's the future for you?
I'll probably just, you know, sort of like I described the last few years.
Right.
I'll probably, you know, and then just every museum I go by, every good gallery that,
It'll still be art centric then.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's going to be going, seeing art, looking at art, or architecture probably.
I mean, I'm big in social justice.
Okay.
When I closed the gallery, I ran the local Amnesty International group in Santa Fe for 10 years. And when I got off of doing that, I got on the board of New Energy Economy. So social justice is something that takes up a lot of my time. And I just signed up for a climate master's program with the Santa Fe. I mean, climate issues in the Southwest.
And this is going to get a master's in this?
It's called a master's class.
Yeah.
I will have some. I will have something, but it's really just to be a part of. It dovetails well with being on the board of New Energy Economy. We all know what's going on with the wildfires, and my house looks at the Sangre de Cristos,
Right.
and we all know that is going to go up in flames one day. Everyone, and we did a walk. My husband and I did a walk in the watershed last fall, and it's in great shape. Oh my God, they've done such a good job with our watershed. But the watershed extends up through the Pecos, and that is all going to go.
Yeah.
And then all that silt and all that destruction is going to come down into our watershed. So with the Santa Fe Watershed Association, I'm taking this master's in climate master's program.
To try to,
And that's a lot of
Yeah.
scientific reading.
Yeah.
So I don't have time for all that appraisal work.
yeah, well, you're still curious and you're doing other things.
Yeah.
More philanthropic things that matter to you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what happens when you hit a certain age, hopefully.
Yeah.
You either do creative things or philanthropic things. And you go, okay, I've done the money thing, I've done the family thing, and now I want to do the human thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and that's what you're doing,
Yeah.
which is really cool. How has Santa Fe changed? Just want to know that since you've been there for such a very long time.
Yeah. And everywhere you go has changed.
It's true, but let's just say the art scene, if nothing else, in Santa Fe, because you're very well associated with it.
Yeah. The art scene used to be very local, as well as the Taos 10 and the Santa Fe artists, but the Taos 10 brought a more national and international crowd in. But it was very local, and you knew all the galleries and you knew all the people, and when you went to things, you knew everybody
It's community.
at them.
Yeah.
Everyone knew everyone,
Right.
from, the homeless person wearing all the silver he had so much silver on his arms and
Right.
neck and, lived in a storage shed. I mean, from literally him and the rubber lady to, you know,
To the players and the
yeah, the
collectors
players and the celebrities. I'm trying
Right.
to think of Sam Shepard and
Carol Burnett, probably.
that's right.
And,
Exactly. There were so many.
anyway.
So everybody communed. It
Right.
was not, and I mean, I'm talking about the homeless people really mixed with at
Right.
these gallery openings
Right.
and stuff. It was just that. And now it's more like a chocolate box that has had all these extra chocolates put in. And it just feels like a overstuffed, and there's a lot of galleries that I can't look at the art when I go through.
Yeah.
And then I have been going to the galleries with a couple girlfriends who are looking for art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had an opportunity since the end of last year to be going every couple of weeks like I hadn't been doing for a while. And I was happy to see some really good artists up on the walls.
Yeah.
Still stuff that you can't really look at.
Well, it's really gone contemporary, right? Wouldn't you say, as far as the art?
I mean, there's still representational artists who do landscapes and who do.
I know there's artists that do it, but the galleries themselves, I think,
Mm-hmm.
seems like there's more of that. Not to say that's bad or anything. I like contemporary. I love contemporary art, actually. But
Well-
it does feel like to me, it feels like it's harder to find something that's historically related or that type of thing.
Yeah.
Or representational for that.
Yeah. Because the buyer is not, and I might be saying this erroneously because I haven't sold in so long, but the buyer isn't as curious about. I mean, we were just teaching art history for everyone who came into our
Correct.
gallery.
That's right.
It was, this is who he is. This is when he did this. She was
Right.
the first. She was a lesbian. She lived up on Canyon Road. She was you just told people were curious about what they were buying. Now it just has to fit into a modern setting.
Yeah.
And,
We've lost some of the history, maybe.
maybe. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been in it in so long. I would hope they
I know we haven't here. I mean, to me, I've always said, if you don't have the history, you don't know the story.
Yeah.
So how can you sell or show someone or impart the beauty and the reason why this is interesting if you don't even understand the history?
Yeah.
Or how it got there or why it got there or why I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, like you said before, curiosity.
Yeah.
If people aren't curious about,
yeah.
then I don't know. Where does that leave you? I guess it's just a way of
Read
being that
you.
I don't understand.
Right.
Of something else is taking their attention that I don't get.
Yeah. So have we missed anything? Is there anything we should
No, I don't think so.
cover? You've got a long drive to Santa Fe?
I have.
Or
Well,
two-
I
or
have a
two-
long drive to TRC. I'm going to
TRC,
soak
yeah.
in the hot springs tonight, but I have daylight savings time.
Yeah.
So
know.
I've lost an
You
hour.
did lose an hour. All right, I'll let you go, Susan.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed talking
Oh,
to you.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm honored.
Oh, no. I mean, you're one of the pillars of, no, you are. You are. I know you don't see yourself that, but it's true. One of the pillars of the Santa Fe community of Western Native art, the whole milieu. You've been there for decades and decades and decades. I mean, I dealt with you and worked with you and bought things from you and maybe sold things. I don't remember if we did or not, but I know we've definitely worked together many, many times. And I always enjoyed going to your galleries. And I liked your galleries because I never knew what I would see, and I might be ignited in some other thing. I had no understanding, but go, oh, that's cool. What's that? And you go, oh, this is why this is interesting. Da, 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 da. I'd be like, okay, that's, so I could learn. When you can go into a gallery and learn something, especially if you're a gallerist, kind of like Vic Hansen did to other people, that's a really a gift. And that's why, you're just as, clearly, you're one of the cogs of this whole, you're
Wow.
like Ray Dewey or any of the others.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I guarantee you they would say the same.
Oh, I can't even believe my
Trust me.
ears.
They would. Absolutely, 100%. So, Don't underestimate that girl from Wisconsin.
Oh, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Mark. You made this so easy.
Well, it's just listening to a great story. So I'll let you get on the road. I know you got to go, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.